What is up, guys? Eric here from Real Film Reviews, bringing you another movie review, this time for the new Tom Holland film, Spider-Man: Far From Home. Spider-Man: Far From Home is directed by Jon Watts, stars Tom Holland, Jake Gyllenhaal, Zendaya, and Jon Favreau. This film is the official end to Marvel Cinematic Universe's Phase 3 of movies. Before I go into the general plot of the film, I do want to say if you haven't seen Avengers: Endgame, I am about to spoil things from that film as this comes after it. So, now that I have said that, spoilers are ahead for my plot description of this film. Not spoilers for this movie, but spoilers for Endgame. This movie picks up immediately following the events of Endgame and what has become known as the blip, from when Thanos snapped away all of these people and then all of the people came back when they snapped again in Endgame. So this film follows all of these people who have lived this extremely different life now at this point. There's people who lived for 5 more years and are now 5 years older, but they were in the same grade as these people who got blipped back. It's a very interesting world that they live in now, and there's a lot of differences to the world that we have known for such a long time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they use that very well. In this film, Peter Parker is just trying to live a normal life now. After the events of Endgame, he has seen more things than someone his age should have ever had to have seen. So he wants to just live a normal summer. He wants to go on his European vacation with his class, he wants to tell the girl that he likes how he feels, and he wants to just be a teenager, but of course that can't happen. The first thing that I want to point out in this film is the thing that I took away the most, and it's that the performances are far and away better than they were in Homecoming, and maybe that's because some characters had bigger roles, but I really think that a lot of these actors have really come into their own in some of these roles, and others have just been given a more prominent place to be in the script, which I think is really great. First off, I think Zendaya as this new rendition of MJ does a really good job. She's very endearing in sort of a dorky, nerdy way, and I think that that's perfect for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I also really loved Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio in the film. They give us this interesting rendition of Mysterio that's very different from what we've seen in the comics, and I think that it's cool to get this fresh new outlook on a character that's existed for such a long time. Plus, Jake Gyllenhaal is just like one of the greatest actors in the world. Alongside him, I love that Jon Favreau playing Happy Hogan has this bigger role in this movie because he's an extremely endearing character, and I think that he is such a lovable guy in these movies that the fact that they're giving him more of a role is so important for the character of Peter Parker. But the person who impressed me the most was Tom Holland as Peter Parker / Spider-Man. I really think he came into his own in this role. He's had emotional sequences in previous films like Infinity War, in Endgame he had some, and in Homecoming he had some lighter ones. But I really think that this movie is where we all truly see who Tom Holland's Spider-Man is. And I have to say that I do really like Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I don't know where he sits for me yet. It constantly flips around because I have differing opinions on the character of Spider-Man versus Peter Parker, and that's not something that we need to get into in this video. But I really think that Tom Holland has come into his own in this role and made Spider-Man his own character, which I think is awesome. My favorite scene in this whole movie is actually just a fairly quiet dialogue sequence between him and Happy Hogan. I think it is a beautiful scene that showcases some fantastic acting and really, really great character traits from those two guys. And I really hope that as these movies continue, we get to see more and more from those two together. Jon Watts, I think, did a really great job directing this movie. He had a lot more emotion to handle since this film takes place after the blip, the death of Iron Man, the loss of Captain America. All of these characters that we've known for such a long time are now gone in this world. And I think that he handled those emotional things very well, along with the action, because the action in this movie is really great. It's got huge set pieces, awesome thrills, and it's full of amazing visuals because the CGI throughout this film is really some of the best I feel like we've seen so far in the Marvel Universe. It's amazing, and there's a ton of it, so it had to look good, but it really is fantastic. All of the scenes with Mysterio and the Elementals are so awesome. They also utilize different techniques that I feel like we really haven't seen in too many of the Marvel movies yet, maybe in shorter sequences, but there's some very, very big sequences in this movie that utilize things that we've never seen before. I can't really talk about them because it's kind of a spoiler too, but I will say visually this movie was extremely impressive. And then just like every other Marvel film, this movie does have a lot of comedy really sewn throughout the script to add in some comedic relief, especially in a movie like this that has a lot more emotional weight to it than normal, and I think that that worked very well. My personal favorite comedic relief was Martin Starr, who played one of the teachers who is the chaperone for all of the kids on the European trip, and I think that he did a fantastic fantastic job. Martin Starr is hilarious, and he was the perfect choice for the role. I do have a couple issues with the film, and one of them kind of sucks because I can't really talk about it since it's a really big spoiler for the movie, so I will talk about it just in general, and it's the character development and character choices throughout the film. There are certain characters in this movie that I think the actors portraying them do a very good job, but I don't necessarily agree with the way that they move as a character and grow, because it makes sense to an extent, and then in other scenarios it just really doesn't quite fit. And I think that that's my issue with it. I can't really go into too much more detail, but I think the character was well done to a point, and then I think if they would have just gone, full bore, just gone for it, the character would have worked out way better than they had, in my opinion. And then my other issue with the film is the pace of it. Now, I feel like the most common thing you complain about when it comes to pace is a very slow pace that doesn't feel like anything's happening. This film is actually the opposite. I think this movie needed to slow down a little bit. Some of the comedy comes from the fact that the characters are constantly moving around in Europe on this trip. They only spend a day or two in each location, just like a real European trip you would go on with your class. So that makes sense. But I think the movie gets a little too full of itself in the action of moving, so it's constantly trying to add in all of these other things over the course of these trips to these new locations, and when it does that, for me, it really feels like I just need some breathing room. I just need the movie to calm down a little bit so that way I can get my bearings, because it's really hard to ever feel attached or engrossed by any of the scenes or big sequences or huge fights throughout the film, because they just feel so rushed throughout the script. It feels like the script is trying so hard to get us to the end that I sort of feel like it's losing that emotional attachment that's necessary for a film like this. I'm gonna give Spider-Man Far From Home a B. This movie had the insanely, impossibly difficult job of following Avengers Endgame, the end of an era. And if I'm being honest, I think with the exception of a couple small issues that I had with it, it did the best any movie could following something like that. I'm extremely excited to see where, I guess, Phase 4 goes for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This gave me a lot of hope for the future. I think Tom Holland gives the best performance thus far as Spider-Man, and I really, really hope that this movie does extremely well and we get to continue to see the Marvel Universe grow. I don't want Endgame to be the end of superhero movies, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to keep seeing the same thing. I hope that this movie, being as different as it is from what we've seen before, that we get to see more of that as the new films come out. Well guys, as always, I'm Eric. If you enjoyed this video, please do like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of Spider-Man Far From Home, share everything we do here on Real Film Reviews, and I hope to see you guys later.